Hello and welcome to another episode of Football Pundit podcast. This video is sponsored by Jersey Republic. Do remember to follow them on the social media, and you can find the links in the descriptions below. Do remember to follow us on the social media handles and like, share, and subscribe to our videos. And do not forget to click the bell icons. I'd like to thank again Uday for joining from the Loudmouth show. And obviously, it was not a very happy evening for you
was
guys.
it was not a loud mouth today.
Who's talking? Who's the fifth person talking? I don't see anyone.
So, yeah, I mean, let's dive right into it. I mean, the Liverpool City game. I mean, we were just pondering over it, and what were your initial
Right.
thoughts on the game itself?
So shall I start? I think I'm a Liverpool supporter, and everyone would be ready to take a go at me.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely. We are just waiting.
um, so I think, yeah, man. I think the first 20 minutes, City were dominating on possession. Liverpool couldn't even get a touch on the ball. I think the hold-up play, the link-up play is what Liverpool really lacked after 20 minutes too. But we got back to the possession way of playing football from the 20th to 45th minute, and we had decent chances. Mane missed two headers. It was the first one was easy to take, but he couldn't capitalize on that. The second one again came off corner. Would have done better on that. But I think Curtis Jones played a really good game. If you've seen his game, his passes, his dribbles, he completed all of them. And Trent defensively, I thought he had a good game because he kind of pocketed Sterling 5 or 6 times. But yeah, towards the end of the game, I think it all came down to the defensive frailties. I think when you have a makeshift defensive line, you can't really perform in throughout the 90 minutes, right? So, which is where they got behind our defense a couple of times. They could have scored 2, 3 more goals, in fact, and they didn't take that opportunity either. So, I think, yeah, City deserved that win. Foden was spectacular with that goal. Gundogan has been quite the revelation for them this season. He's been playing very offensively. Usually he plays as a defensive midfielder next to Rodri, but this season he's playing as a number 8, goes in the number 10 position. He's very hybrid as a player, very versatile too. So yeah, man, I think Pep is nurturing a world-class squad with the defensive setbacks that he's had over the season. This season he's not really facing that with Ruben Diaz and even the other guy, John Stones. They've performed very well. So yeah, I'd want to hear what others think about the match.
Yeah, I mean, Gundogan was definitely a revelation in the game. I mean, it was a second half was definitely a redemption for him after a very mediocre penalty which he took. I mean, that was skyrocketed into the stands. I mean, that was something which Klopp would have been happy about. I mean, in the beginning, but second half definitely he turned around and he played the perfect role of Sergio Aguero, which he usually plays, and scoring from the both the goals which were combined from outside the box and inside the box when just from a 6 yard distance of the goal. So that was definitely a good game for Gundogan that way. But I think a special shout out should go to Phil Foden because he was definitely the one who's been nurtured right now, and at one point when he was being considered to be loaned to another club for development. I mean, I think it's definitely the best decision I think Guardiola has taken, but not sending him away, and now being nurtured under the likes of last season with David Silva and this season with Sterling. I mean, the goal which Phil Foden scored was definitely something which was out of the Sterling textbook, because that is something which he usually does a lot. That was something really special to watch in this game. So yeah, I guess let's move to the United fans who were really expecting a Liverpool win. I mean, they usually are not in favor of a Liverpool win, but they wanted it after a abysmal performance last night. I mean, the 3-3 draw was something which they were not expecting. They
That's a harsh word. That's a harsh word.
Yeah, abysmal is a very harsh word. Yeah,
It was not abysmal performance.
yeah, it was very unlucky for United.
I mean, I think Alisson and De Gea were neck and neck with each other with the mistakes which they were making in both the games. So let's.
But I'd rather call what Allison did was unforced error, you know. De Gea could have stepped up better than that because Allison just looked dismal, man. Look at his face. He was so saddened by whatever he did. And he probably thought that he's just another curious, what he did against Real Madrid. He's doing the same thing against City. Thank God we didn't face them in a cup final or something, man. We would have been symbolic.
But I mean, it was okay. Like, what Allison did was, I mean, yes, he shouldn't have done what he did, but David De Gea has been that you can say he's been abysmal for us this season. He saved like 60% of our shots. That's it. Like that's a very low percentage from a United keeper. So
Yeah.
And the problem is, whenever United concede a goal, it inadvertently feels like it is De Gea's mistake.
yeah, I mean the last 2 games at Old Trafford. I mean not the last 2 games, but the last 3 games. Like the one that we lost against Sheffield also, the second goal that we considered, it was a mistake.
That was De Gea. That was De Gea.
He didn't clear the ball. So yeah.
Yeah,
Even the
I
first
just want
goal,
to add
he
one
was
thing. I know you
responsible
guys.
for that.
I just want to add one thing. So just before you go, what do you think about Matic? He could have probably come on and he could have added that defensive stability to the team last night. They shouldn't have conceded 3 goals, in the second half. What do you think?
So what I thought was that once we got our noses in front when we got to 3-2, getting on Tuanzebe was the bad decision because he has been making mistakes. Like he made the mistake for the Sheffield second goal. He made the mistake last night giving the free kick away in a very tricky situation where all we needed to do was to hold out for a couple more seconds. Like that was a silly free kick to give away. So I think Matic would have been a better option last night just to see the game out. But like I saw a video that stated that it feels like we got robbed last night. And that's exactly what I felt last night. Like somebody had come into my house and burgled 3.7 from us.
that is the only statement. I mean, yeah, you got robbed. I mean, you were at home. You were.
It was a broad daylight robbery.
It was supposed to be the most comfortable win.
Yeah.
You had two goals to defend.
Mm-hmm.
You could have made several changes with the defense, with the tactic to hold on to it. But it didn't happen, and then you played just the way you were playing before. I mean, after 2-0 going up, there was no change.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably Ole was thinking of scoring more and more goals because he thought that Everton might have a defensive frailties, but I think he misjudged the counter-attacking prowess of
I thought
Everton.
Everton were poor too, man. They don't nurture a very high quality squad. Look at Keane. He made so many mistakes.
They are not high quality, but
they were lucky.
the kind of play they do together with the pace and the wingers and Richarlison, actually, even if he's not scoring, finally I'm seeing something more from him than last 2 years he has been in Everton. And I think just making those plays and just being at the right position, hitting the shots, I think that puts De Gea under pressure, right? Keeping a keeper under pressure continuously, one way or the other, either he might just gift a goal that he did, or there would be some counter-attacking chances where the defense won't be able to handle the strikers. And I think that is what happened because Everton had nothing to lose anymore. I mean, they were 2-0 down. All they had to do is just attack. I mean, even if they concede 3, it won't make a huge difference, right? And I think United just fell into their trap.
Yeah. So I want to bring the conversation back to Liverpool because I hadn't started watching the game.
Of course you do.
Yeah. So when when I came back, when I put the game on, that exact moment was the one when Gundogan put Liverpool ahead, and I was like, okay, City might have done some good play because they have been playing well. What I saw was that Alisson, once he gave the ball away to City, got it back, gave it back again to City, and then they were able to score. And I was like, what is happening in this game?
Yeah, I mean, twice he did that. Twice similar mistakes.
like I said, so,
Very, very bad clearance.
Very bad distribution.
Yeah, I mean that was particularly a brain fade moment for him. I mean, that word because I mean I do not think that Alisson is kind of a player who will be making same kind of mistakes twice. But he
absolutely
did do that in this match. But and obviously there was some. I think it's not something which I mean it was not a very shambolic performance from Liverpool where you can actually like keep nitpicking everything and say that they are just not doing anything right. But yeah, it was just those 2 particular mistakes which caused them the goals, particularly reflected on the scoreline as well, because City is not the team which will miss out on those kind of opportunities.
I mean, even both managers said the same thing in the post-match conference. Like, even Pep Guardiola said that Liverpool were not playing that bad.
Yeah, I mean,
it was those 2 mistakes that helped us get the advantage over them, and then after that mistake, actually what happens was what Guardiola said was probably Liverpool losing the confidence, and that point of time, that certain point where you understand that the opposition is fumbling right now, they need to get their footing back. At that point of time, what Guardiola said was that he pushed the team forward. He said that we are not stopping right now. This is the perfect time. If we give Liverpool probably 10 minutes more, they might get those formations back and confidence back. We don't need to do that. I think what's better is to just push forward. And Guardiola.
I want to take this up with you, Uday. What do you like? Last couple of seasons, what it felt was like, even if Liverpool conceded 3, they'll outscore and score 4 and win the match. But this season, they are not able to string a couple of passes together and get the shots away to score those goals. What is happening with the front three that has been so potent for you for the last 3 seasons? What do you feel about that?
So you're bang on with that statistic. Again, they've actually declined with the goal scoring ratio season on season. They've got, I don't know if you know this, they've got the best trio scoring ratio after Messi, Suarez and Neymar. I don't know that statistic, but yeah, coming on to that. Liverpool have just been found out. They're caught out. They've been gotten used to playing on a high line. People know how they play. Aston Villa, you know how they played against them. And that's a very good example of how Liverpool have been exposed. And now he's also trying to transition them into a very defensive, deep-ended team, which they're not really able to pull off because you have a Henderson and makeshift defense playing right now at the moment. And you have new players playing all the time. You've got Curtis Jones sometimes, you've got Shaqiri, sometimes you've got Thiago. So it's all a mixed match of different players playing. Last season, you had strong players, man, in the midfield. You had a Gini Wijnaldum who was getting supported by Henderson, Fabinho. He had a Mane who was in form. He had a Salah who was always in form. And this season too, I think Salah's been scoring those goals. But is he actually helping the other players out? No, he's not, man. I don't think so. He's not selfish. I wouldn't call him selfish. But again, he's just a finisher. So that's what he's doing for Liverpool. And Liverpool need a better number 9 is what I feel, man. We need someone who's an out-and-out striker. We should change our game tactics in a way that we are just targeting that front person. You know, we need to do that. We need a taller person. We had a Peter Crouch. People laugh at Peter Crouch, but he has done things for Liverpool. Andy Carroll has done things for Liverpool. We need players like that, man.
I don't completely agree with you because I feel like you guys are suffering. You guys are suffering because of the injuries that you guys have had. Like you guys are playing your main midfielders into a makeshift defense and playing them as a centre back. And I feel like I would have preferred the Klopp to have played at least one of the centre backs that he has signed on this match. I know it's a very big game, and they're not ready for the Premier League, and it's a very massive clash for Liverpool against City, right? So, but I still feel if they would have played at like a genuine centre back, and one of their midfield, either of the Fabinho or Henderson would have played in the centre midfield position, and they would have at least dragged them at least into some kind of
chances,
some kind of chances, yeah. But like they're suffering because of that reason, because they don't have any creativity in the midfield, right?
I guess like Uday said, that the front trio is the one which is like has always been outscoring the opponents and everything. But it's also
and I don't Royal, but I don't think it was ever about outscoring. Liverpool for the last 2 seasons have been defensively also very solid. It was never about outscoring. But the thing is, always never conceded.
Yeah, but the thing is that when it's also about confidence, right? I mean, you have the front trio scoring, but they are being supported by the mid trio as well, which is Wijnaldum, Henderson, and Fabinho. I mean, now that the two of them are actually playing in a makeshift defense strategy right now for Liverpool.
Yeah. I mean, also that Fabinho can't score outside like 20-yard goals anymore.
Yeah. And knowing that. They have signed the player. I think Klopp already knows that they needed a playmaker in the midfield as well. So, I mean, seeing that it's a big match and not introducing them and also is not something which is, I would completely agree, because at the same time, you need those midfielders in the midfield as well, not in the defense position which they are playing right now.
I want to get in where Rishabh left the conversation. Rishabh, I think you're bang on with the fact that we could have played a Kabak or maybe a Ben Davies, man. But I think I'd be a bit skeptical if it comes to choosing one of the younger lads in such a match. Again, your point. So I wouldn't really go in with that, man. I think things could have gone worse off for Liverpool from the start itself if you played slower players. Nat Phillips, Reece Williams, all these four players are not faster than what we've played tonight. Yeah. So even if you have a Ferran Torres who wouldn't play tonight, you have a Sterling, Foden, all these pacey players, you need good pacey defenders too. So I think in terms of team selection, we weren't really wrong with the players we have at the moment. But again, you spoke about the front three not clicking. You're absolutely bang on with that. And again, man, it's not about only the front three not clicking. It's about Firmino too. You look at the number of goals he's scoring. You look at the how he plays. He plays more of a number 10 role. He doesn't even play a false 9 role. He plays more as a number 10. Yeah. If Liverpool is playing a 4-2-3-1, he'll fit well in the system in a number 10. You need a striker, man. You look at Timo Werner. He's not clicking for Chelsea right now, but he will. Eventually, he has to because he's got a plethora of talent to offer. And such players always work in some one league or the other. Look at Lukaku, what happened to him in United. He was being asked to be more mobile for the team. He couldn't get more mobile for the team, which is why they ousted him out. He scored a decent number of goals for United too that season. He scored very good goals.
Yeah.
But he just couldn't accustom to the system. And now look at him in Inter Milan. He's being compared to Ronaldo, Nazario, and all these players.
Yeah. So, I mean, now that you've already mentioned Timo Werner, I can't help but talk about the other big game which happened in the midweek as well. So let's shift our focus now to the Tottenham and Chelsea match. I mean, it was touted to be a big game, but it definitely turned out to be a disappointing one in terms of the game we witnessed over there. I mean, it was not something which was a game which was right out of the bat, which was had a popcorn thriller and a movie like which had a lot of entertainment quoted in the match. But credit to Tuchel, I think we should say that because he definitely is driving the team forward with that. So, I mean, Rishabh, you were the one who was the first one to say, I mean, it was one of the most boring matches you ever witnessed. So, what were your thoughts on that specifically?
I'd probably not say one of the most boring because I've seen United play against Louis van Gaal, man. Like this is still okay in that case. Yeah, I mean, I don't really think it was it could have been definitely a 0-0 draw. It was just a pathetic challenge from Eric Dyer.
Yeah.
Like, just lying down and actually just for some reason he just he started to kick the ball while he was lying down, and that brought down Timo Werner, gave the penalty away, and there was no kind of press from Spurs. I didn't feel like they had they were in a mindset that they could ever win that game. They came here, they thought I mean, it was on their home, but yeah, they came to the ground. They was like, we're going to lose today, so we're not going to press, we're not going to do anything. They were just sat back and let Chelsea dominate the game. And we've seen 3 games with Tuchel. Sorry, what?
3 clean sheets as well.
Yeah, 3 clean sheets, and plus like the way he's playing is just the tiki-taka style, right? Like he's been doing that possession-based game and like slowly started to go towards the goal and start. It was more like I felt like when I saw the 2010 Spain in the World Cup, it definitely felt that kind of performance from them.
So, like the Eric Dyer mistake was, I don't know what he's doing, lying on the field, just kicking randomly. Like he's not even trying to get the ball; he's just kicking to get over. And
he's just hoping that my foot touches the ball and not Werner's leg, but that does not happen.
Yeah, and Anshuman used to say that getting Timo Werner as a number 9 would definitely improve his game, and that's what I saw like yesterday. He was making those runs against a very tough Tottenham defense, and he was getting past those players. So that is something that Timo Werner can bring to the team, and he would now eventually get better because he has a manager who trusts his
as a number 9, right?
Other than that, what do you expect from Jose Mourinho? If it's a big game, it will be a boring game from Jose Mourinho. And anybody who had the idea that Tottenham would be title contenders this season, sorry, man, not gonna happen. Because Tottenham, without a number 9 like Harry Kane and Son were playing so well because that's the Jose Mourinho system. Like he has a player who flicks the ball on and the runner who actually ends up scoring the goal. But without that target man, the system falls apart, and Gareth Bale is no help to them. So I don't know how they're gonna. No golf comment yet.
That's true. But now let's move to the rant man over here. Now, I mean, you've been quiet for quite a long time for not speaking about Chelsea. So, what are your thoughts on that?
We
Nah,
have the
man,
angry
it's not
rant
gonna
man.
be a rant today. And actually, to be really honest, I don't have that much praise for Chelsea as well. I mean, this was not a game where we saw Chelsea being the team that I have been accustomed to see to run around teams and score goals. It was more of a bad performance from Spurs that helped us get the victory because, as Rishabh said, it was a penalty 1-0 win, and it could easily have been a 0-0 draw. Uh, but then, having said that, I think just keeping our formation and the game plan in that way, what United would should have done, getting a 2-0 win over, getting a 2-0 ahead of Everton, I think that is where Tuchel helped the team get the shape correct. I think he knew that this is gonna be a drag affair. He knows that Mourinho has a different kind of formation, and probably he expected Mourinho to go more attacking. And I think for that, I think after the second half, most of our backline were behind. I mean, they were not pushing forward that much. Even our wing backs were playing as full backs in the second half. So I think keeping, I think from the game plan perspective, I think Tuchel did what was right to do. It worked, but I don't think that it was some kind of performance that can like we can judge Chelsea over these kind of performance and say that yes, Chelsea have improved drastically because there are frailties and but we can see a promising side from Chelsea. The kind of players that Chelsea has, they are mixed up with the kind of formation Tuchel makes them play, and I think just as Kshitij said, it's a tika taka system, and it's a very different system that I'm not accustomed to see Chelsea play with that kind of passing game. So it is also new to me, and I think I'm just hoping that the kind of results that we are nicking out here, it's gonna help us build that momentum. And I think playing Werner at number 9 role, even though he's not scoring, I mean, getting into the D, getting the penalty. I think it's a baby steps. These are the baby steps that he needs to take to get that form back. And if Tuchel is having that trust on him, I think that's all good. But I think more of a talking point is for Jose Mourinho and Spurs. I think I could not see a single player making those runs. I mean, there was a one chance at 35th minute, right, when Vinicius was supposed to pass the ball to Son, and it could have been exactly the same goal that Son has been scoring, and he scored the same kind of goal today as well. So I think that one chance they missed it out, and I think after that I don't think they performed anything as good as they have been performing, and I think the lack of Harry Kane played a huge role in Spurs not getting that confidence, not getting those what do we say, a leadership role at Spurs at this point of time. I think he's back and he scored, and probably this also reinforces my statement that without Kane, I think Spurs lack any kind of passion.
I guess that's a very honest review for the Tottenham side. I mean, they definitely are missing out on Harry Kane, but it was a surprise pick for today where he came back into the squad. I mean, he was expected to be out for a few weeks and definitely not expected to come back in a couple of game weeks. But right away, when the moment he came back, they won with a 2-0 game. So that's a definitely a big boost for them. I mean, now that I guess Harry Kane is fit again, so that's a big.
But you know what? I don't think Mourinho still is like ready to change his game plan. I think he's still adamant that this is the game plan that will happen, that will take him out. And I don't think even like if Harry Kane would have been gone for a longer time, I think he might have changed his game plan, but now because Harry Kane is back and he has started scoring, I think he's gonna go back to the same kind of game plan to score goals early, though they didn't score the goal early this time. But the game plan would be pretty much the same: score goals early and then fall back. So I don't think he has learned that much from the Chelsea loss. That is my opinion, because the way he played today, I think the way Spurs played today, they played the same game. I don't see any changes in their game plan anytime soon. So I don't know if it's gonna help Mourinho and Spurs ahead.
But that is exactly what I said. Like, when we were previewing Liverpool versus Spurs, I said it, like, if Mourinho wants to finish the job, he can do it in 45 minutes.
Right.
That's the problem with him. It's just that he wants to stay back and keep inviting the pressure from the opponent's team. And then if there is one defensive lapse, the whole game plan, the whole game is just over. Like, he has to rethink like what he needs to do now. And then once the game is open, he just it's very difficult to come back from.
But you know what I think about Tuchel, man, as a manager, after seeing the game against Tottenham, I know it was a pretty boring game, but his tactics are still on point, man. I think it comes down to the team as well, because he's actually a manager who would like good runners and good ball providers, and that is why he's playing Christensen as well tonight. I think he'd rather have a team who plays attacking football. All in all, they make those runs, they make ball progressing runs, and he's always focused on ball progression. So I think Tuchel is the right manager for Chelsea, man, and Chelsea fans better get used to watching good ball progression ahead, because like City, Tuchel might just surprise City as well in the upcoming game if they're facing one. I don't know if they are.
I mean, also like Tuchel trusting Rudiger, who was probably our third or fourth choice centre back, and he has been trusting him. I think he's seeing the passion of those players who are not getting the chances, and I think this is an advantage of getting a new manager, because now the players who are out of focus, they can get their hunger back, because now everybody wants to impress under a new manager. So now the team has that passion back, and I think we have seen that with Chelsea time and time again. I think the only problem is that nothing is long term.
So now that we've already covered about Tottenham and Chelsea, let's move to the big again, the controversial decisions which happened over the week, which were related to two matches. One was for the Arsenal match, where David Luiz was sent off for yet another challenge and yet another red card, his third in his Arsenal tenure. And we had a Bednarek red card as well, and one of the most famous victories for United, which was 9-0 victory. And so, I mean, I want to get your thoughts on that. I mean, I've had countless discussions with Rishabh, and we've been saving our thoughts on that specific topic for a long time now, because we didn't want to talk too much about the VAR decisions which happened over the week, and save our thoughts for the podcast. So let's start with you, Rishabh. I mean, you were the one who was. Let's start with your game itself, because you were the one who was Bednarek was definitely a red card. I'm not talking about penalty right now. I'm just talking about the red card.
There is nothing to say. It is both a red card. It's as simple as that. If you guys don't believe it, go check out the rules and then come.
Then why did FA overturn the decision? I mean, I guess they don't know the rules then, right?
The Bednarek one. Yeah, I don't know that, because technically he made a challenge for the ball.
He did not make a challenge, that's for sure. First of all, he did not make a challenge.
Okay, dude. We are in the era of technology, okay? I could see that Martial was stripped from his knee. Okay? So he was stripped. He was on goal. He was the last man. Of course, it's a penalty. It's a red card. For the Luiz one, I'll come back. For the Luiz one, it was a mistake, because he did not make a challenge. I don't know who fell, but he got tripped. That person got tripped from the back.
Yeah, Villanose was the.
He got tripped from the back heel. Like, he was running and he got tripped because of the back heel from David Luiz. So that I can understand that was a mistake. It was a mistake that happened. So I understand that was harsh. But Bednarek's red card is definitely justifiable. Like I don't.
Martial definitely did play into the Mourinho's style of play where he won the penalty by diving. I think it was a clear dive for me. I do not think that it was the one where you would be seeing it was a challenge or that he tripped because of the knee which was in contact with I think it was the shin of Martial, but I do not think it was a challenge where he could have won the penalty. I think it was definitely, maybe you could have given a penalty, but or a yellow card, but I do not think it was a red card.
If it is not a red card, if it's not a penalty, then it's not a red card. It's as simple as that.
I mean, Uday, you've been laughing throughout this whole or smiling throughout this whole conversation. I mean,
I think Rishabh is being too harsh on both the players, but I truly think both the red cards shouldn't be red, man. It's as easy as that. He poured it out. Come on, Rishabh. I mean, those red cards, they could have gotten a yellow, I agree, but even he didn't even touch the back. He didn't even touch his leg. The attackers, I forgot the name of the Wolves striker. I think it should have been.
I completely agree. For David Luiz, it's fine. Like I can definitely say that it should have been a yellow rather than a red, because it was never like he did not make a challenge to the ball.
True, but Bednarek, man, it was uncalled for, man. It was totally uncalled for. I don't think he should have gotten a red at all, man. And both lads were losing 7-0 that time. I think you made them lose 9-0. Imagine. So I have nothing to say, man.
Yeah, I mean, let's go to another United fan now. I mean, I think he is also one of the players one of the fans who says it's a penalty but not a red card. So
yeah. The only reason it's not a red card is because Saints were already 6-0 down at that point. So that red only made things worse for them.
It's not a reason. I think you cannot.
Yeah, but see the thing is that
if I'm winning 8-0 and I kick someone on the face, it's not a red card. Like, come on, dude. Like that doesn't make sense.
That was a soft penalty. Like it's not a clear-cut penalty. It was a soft penalty, right? So there was contact. Martial went down. It was an easy penalty, but it was a soft penalty. So at that point, giving a red card to a team that is already it does not impact the game at that point, right? It's true that it's a clear-cut goal-scoring chance. He is trying to pull out of the challenge, and he's not trying to make a actual rash challenge or a challenge that could actually cause some sort of damage. So I think that could have been a yellow. That could have been a potential yellow. That is my only complaint with that. Other than that, it was a definite penalty because he even if he does not make the challenge, even if he's trying to pull out of the challenge, he did trip Martial, and he did trip Martial in the goal. In the box, so that is a penalty.
Yeah, so then it's a red card. It's as simple as that.
No, see, okay.
I mean, when you speak about red cards, it's usually like it has to be very intentional. It was definitely. I mean, if you look at the replays, you'll see that Bednarek was not. He was actually pulling out of the challenge. If you look closely, he was actually pulling out. He was not going in and charging into Martial and gonna throw him out of the field. He was not doing that. He was actually pulling out of the challenge, and in the midst of it.
How many challenges?
It was not a cynical challenge. Yeah, that's true. It was not a cynical challenge.
But how many challenges have you guys seen over the years where a player is going studs up onto the foot of the other player, and he's trying to pull out, but it's still a red card? Why is it a red card then? If this is not a red card, why?
No, because that is a potential harmful tackle to the player.
That's a harmful tackle and an injury which could actually.
Yeah, it's a possible injury concern.
It is. Also, you're changing the rules based on what kind of scoreline and what kind of challenge that was.
I'm not changing it based on the scoreline. I'm not doing that.
That was just an opinion. I'm not trying to change that, but that was just.
I'm not saying this because I'm a United fan, and we already were winning. Like it was not like a 2-2 something like that, and I'm thinking like it should have been a penalty, or I mean it should have been a red card, right? I'm saying that it because of the rules that over the years that what we've seen or what I've seen at least, I feel it is a clear-cut penalty, and if it is a penalty, it should have been a red card, which they did. I mean, yeah, they overturned it, which for some reason I don't know why, but he was through on goal, the last man.
No, Rishabh, let me ask you one thing. There are a lot of when a player runs one-on-one on the goalkeeper, and he manages to sidestep the goalkeeper and goalkeeper trips him. You don't get a red card every time to the goalkeeper, right?
Because of the reason that the when you go past the goalkeeper, it also you have to also take into account that it was actually an easy finish or not. You have to take into account all the things. You have to see.
Yeah, so you do need to take into account that as well. Like at this point, Bednarek is the player, right, who is trying to trip Marshall. Marshall still has to beat the goalkeeper to score that goal, right? So you do need to take into consideration. So if your point is kept up, every time a goalkeeper makes a challenge, that ends up being a penalty. That should also be a red card.
Yes.
Okay, I guess, but I mean, let's not forget another. I mean, that's there was not a VR discussion on that, obviously, but the Leno red card also was a hilarious one for me. I mean, I just want to mention that for Arsenal's, because the way he actually just punched the ball out, it was really hilarious to watch, I guess. But that was something there. I mean, Anshuman, you've been quiet throughout this whole VR discussion, and I just want to get your thoughts. I mean, for this also.
Yeah, man. Like my thoughts are as similar as the majority of people. So that's why I thought, what would I say anything different
in this conversation? So
I believe that it was not red. Simple as that. There was no intent. There was no harmful intention. David Luiz one was absolutely shocking for me to see him get the red card. Even though because when I saw that he got a red card, I immediately expected he must have made a mistake. I mean, that is what David Luiz is known for. But then when I saw it, I said, this is very hard. This is not just. And I think overruling that decision was a good ethical point of view from the FA.
No, they've not overruled the Luiz one. I think they've overruled the Bednarek one. The Luiz red card still stands.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the way it's going on right now.
I think his sympathetic side as a Chelsea fan is coming out for David Luiz. So I feel.
I'm not that big of a supporter of David Luiz anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
even when he was in Chelsea.
I think we can both say that we are bigger supporters of Willian rather than David Luiz because of the impact Willian had over the years for Chelsea, who's been pathetic.
But as a genuine football fan, it was like really disappointing to see that. Like, how could you they have, and I mean, I have seen it in 60 FPS, most slowest version of the tackle. Just to see if there's even just a slight contact or just a slight feather touch, and there was nothing. And even if you see David Luiz, he just tripped. And I think penalty, yes, because that trip cost a goal scoring chance to go away. But a red card, absolutely not.
I think it was David Luiz's reputation cost him the red card. I think it's definitely
his past caught up to him.
Yeah, so that's probably the way it's.
But I mean, there was a time when all these chances were giving a benefit of doubt, and I think because of VAR, I think that benefit of doubt has gone out of the window completely. Yeah. I mean,
I wanted to comment on Bernd Leno, man. Bernd Leno, he probably thinks he's a ball-playing keeper, but he's not. He needs to stick to traditional ways of keeping. He needs to stop those balls like he used to. He needs to stick behind deep because he's not a keeper who can play ahead like Alisson. He's not a sweeper keeper at all. I don't consider him one.
Even Leno knows that. I think what he did was just a brain fart. Just like when there was a throw in and Kante hold the ball with his hands. So, I mean, Leno just did that. I mean, he just punching the ball, he realized, holy shit, what did I do? I just broke the rules. Simple as that.
I still cannot get why Arsenal let go of Martinez. Like he's a better keeper than Leno. Like when he was in Arsenal, they were playing so much better last season, and then they let him go. Why? I just cannot understand that. Similar to
And
why
they let him go to a team. I think they just let him go to a team they did not expect to be at this point of time,
Yeah.
at this position. I think that
and
backfired.
one of the biggest
I
reason
think the
Aston Villa is doing so well is because of Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, the recent game that I saw, I mean, Martinez played absolutely brilliant in that 1-0 win. I mean, he was tremendous. I mean, you can see the kind of leadership he has with the back line. I mean, he's constantly just letting the back line hold their position, even when the attacking starts from the opposition's end. You see the body language of Martinez completely changed. He knows his positions. He knows where he needs to stay. I think that was a pretty bad mistake from Arsenal to let him go because of the experience that he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In playing.
Now that we're talking about like the
Transfers.
the transfers going out and the January transfer window which is recently closed, I think we should. I think it's time we do discuss about the notable signings which have happened over the winter transfer window. Let's start with Arsenal actually, because I'm particularly been very interested with the choice Real Madrid made for letting go of Odegaard, which I think is going to be is a phenomenal player, and I think it's a very brilliant signing for Arsenal. So who would like to take on that? I mean, that's definitely a signing which let's go with you there. I mean, this one with Odegaard is something which I'm really very excited to see for Arsenal now.
You know what I feel about Martin Odegaard? He's definitely a good talent, man. But I've seen him play in the past 2 games. Maybe I'm judging him too soon. I still don't think as a number 10 he's doing justice to the role. Even as at the right flank, he can't do that because in Premier League you can't play at the right flank unless you're not too strong-headed. But as a number 10, he didn't really. I didn't like the way he played, man. Last match he had an easy opportunity at hand from around 10 yards out. He should have shot that in last night. He couldn't. Those are the opportunities you're supposed to take in Premier League. Otherwise, you get benched. And I think I'm afraid if he doesn't give in those performances, I think Smith Rowe will be selected. More above this guy will. Even though they played together in the last match, he was unable to provide those balls to Smith Rowe as well. He couldn't make those runs accurately. So I think, Martin Odegaard needs to step up. Otherwise, it'll be just like what Timo Werner has been for Chelsea,
Yeah, I mean,
the good thing is, after 6 months, he goes back to Real Madrid. Timo Werner's here for the next 5 years.
Maybe. Otherwise, I think Timo's going to be knocking the doors for Anfield, man.
I'm just hoping he gets more chance than Bale.
for sure, I think he's gonna get that much, like more chance. He's not coming to play golf.
Yeah.
So, but I definitely feel the same way. Like, like the moment he's arrived, like I felt like we at the podcast level have been crying for a creative midfielder for Arsenal for a long time, right? But
yeah,
they have finally got one. But since his arrival, they've lost the 3 games. So that's the worrying sign. Like now, like they won somewhere between like 7 to 8 games in a row, Arsenal, and now they've again like got back to their losing form. Like they've only won 1 of their last 5 games. So
yeah, and now that so I mean let's move to Liverpool, because I think they definitely
So
had
shout out to Liverpool to let Minamino go when your front 3 is not clicking. And Minamino, what the first thing he does going to Southampton, scores a goal.
Yeah.
So shout out to Liverpool for that.
Even I have
shout out to United fans also letting Lingard go. I mean, he's a world-class player.
Okay,
to let him go, I mean, that was a pretty bad mistake.
That is a good thing for him.
Yeah, but
we have players in that position.
United are not in desperate need of Lingard over here right now.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, I was just like,
are in need of Minamino, and
it was just a plain old banter.
Guys, I think Minamino wasn't getting enough game time, in Liverpool. So I think it's the best choice for him to be getting game time in Southampton, probably getting the scoring ways. He'll come back to Liverpool and a new player, a genuine player. But I think Origi needs to get out of the team. I'm not in favor of keeping Deadwood in the team. And be all the blood you want to fucking spill over Liverpool. I am not still in favor of keeping Origi, despite what he did for us against Barcelona. That's enough. This is the way out now. But you guys, But I think Lingard was always a good talent, man. I don't know. I think all the trolling and all got to his head too much. I think he probably gets to see it all daily, which is why I think he probably had a psychological effect on his this thing, right? Could have been that too. You never know. But his performances, starting for United, I don't think he could have made those starts for United. Again, he's not a very high quality player. But again, for West Ham, he's doing so well. Look at his mobility. He's acting as a shadow striker next to Antonio. So I think he's going to get good starts.
We saw that before, even like when Ross Barkley went to Aston Villa. I mean, there are certain players and there are certain teams where actually you can express yourself more better. Right. And I think Lingard's move to West Ham and Minamino's move to Saints, I think it is two brilliant choices that the opposition clubs even made.
I mean, it's not brilliant. It's just
it's good business.
They did not need them at this point of time. So yeah, like who's the best?
See, I know, I always rate Minamino very high because I think that he has the kind of stats and the attributes that actually would help him be the number 10 for Liverpool for a pretty long time. I don't see Lingard's future in United. I have stopped seeing that future since 2-3 years back. But talking about Minamino, I think just as Uday said, I think giving him a chance, letting him explore his own frailties and making him a better player, sending him to a club rather than keeping him and destroying his promising potential. I think that is why that is why I said that it is a brilliant move, because I always rate Minamino high, and I think Minamino is that kind of talent, just like Saka in Arsenal, who can just burst into a scene and completely change the entire team around him.
Yeah.
Rohil, I know we are talking about transfers, man, but I just want to ask Kshitij and Rishabh about this. You in 2014, you signed a left back, Luke Shaw, worth 30 million. Now he's stepping up for you finally. He's a world-class fullback, is what people are claiming him to be. What are your thoughts on this transfer signing? Alex Telles not getting game time because Luke Shaw has performed really well. What do you think will happen to Alex Telles now?
I guess I think I want to hear Rishabh first, because he's been very vocal about Alex Telles to start every game. I think he wants him to feature in every every match possible for him. So I want to hear Rishabh first.
How I see football is entertaining. I want to see entertaining football, not defensive like football, and go and make runs. The defenders, the left back should make overlapping runs behind. And I want to see that kind of game plan, right? And that's what Alex Telles brings. I had actually followed him since that rumor started coming around. I started following him around in Porto, and I just simply fell in love with him the first time that I saw him play. And he's delivered good performances even in United shirt. I don't think he's had a bad performance in a United shirt as of now. I still feel like I think we're previewing Liverpool versus reviewing Liverpool versus United in the podcast, and I was saying why didn't Oli start Alex Telles in that game? I feel like he brings a certain different dimension to the game than Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw, you said he's finally stepping up after 6 years. So yeah, he's had his fair share of time in United, and I mean, at this point of time and in the football that we play, the players don't get that much time in a big club like this.
I agree with you, Rishabh, but the problem with Luke Shaw is he was very injury prone, man. Every season he got injured very terribly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that injury hampered his progress a lot.
Yeah. So for me, Luke Shaw, one of the biggest reasons Luke Shaw and Aaron Wan-Bissaka have been playing a lot better is that with Alex Telles, they actually saw crosses coming into the box. For the past 3-4 years, we weren't seeing crosses from our left backs or right backs. Now we're actually crossing balls into the box. Luke Shaw has been able to. Luke Shaw defensively has been pretty solid for the every time he has played in the past few years. Now he's actually able to add that attacking flair in his game as well, and that is to a large part because of the competition now that he has. Because now he knows that if he does not perform, even week in week out, if he slips up, he has a good player just breathing down his neck, wishing for game time. So that in a way pushes a player to improve a lot better. So that's why I feel Luke Shaw is doing a lot better. Like our crossing, our assists from our wide positions have improved so drastically this season, which is good to see.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think you gave a good point. Yeah.
but there's another signing which I think we should talk about is Josh King coming to Everton, the Toffee Park. So I mean, something which I think is going to be very. I think it's a good signing for them, Everton specifically, because I think Ancelotti has seen where they are. They have the shortcomings right now, and they definitely need another striker who's going to come into play. And when Calvert-Lewin is not in play at that point, and giving him the much needed rest which he needs for this particular season, where they can prolong the avoid the injuries rather than prolong. Sorry. So it's what do you think on that? I mean, I think it's a promising signing for me, I think.
Yeah, it is a promising signing. Like we all know that this window, it was not a huge impactful transfer window. But there were businesses, but there were like some low impactful. There was no game-changing transfers, but the one that I saw was Joshua King coming to Everton. The only thing why I believe that this is a good transfer business is because I trust Ancelotti, and the kind of play, and because the kind of team Everton is right now and the kind of performance that they are doing, you can see that Ancelotti has built a team and he has got those kind of players that he really knows what position he really needs to strengthen.
Yeah.
And seeing the results and the kind of progression that they have made. I mean, if it would have been any other signing as well, I would have been impressed, because that is the kind of trust I have on Ancelotti right now. Is the kind of trust that is like probably required from a manager to the team. And I think bringing King to a Everton team where I think he could nurture King with his pace and the finishing and that he always had. I think that's only going to help Everton more. Even if he does not perform in and out every day, I think still the kind of changes that he's going to bring in, I think that's going to get Everton to the position back where the Everton are intended to be.
So could Everton be preparing for a life after Calvert-Lewin? So good.
I think Uday and Anshuman are really celebrating Mason Mount's goal, which is I think it's a brilliant.
I mean, yeah, deservingly so.
Dude, Timo Werner got an assist, man. Finally, Timo Werner is working well for you.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. We're not going to talk about Timo Werner right now.
No, so, I mean, I think an honorable mention also needs to go to Amad Diallo for coming to United. I think he's touted as one of the most promising signings for United.
I think he played his first match in your under 23 recently yesterday. Scored a hat-trick, right, yeah.
For United, so I guess let's take your thought on that. I mean, I think it's a future signing, just like I think we can say now Luke Shaw, because finally you've signed a good player and who's being touted and being compared to Ronaldo from Ronaldo's era at United. So I mean, I think it's a pretty highest reputation to live up to. But what are your thoughts on that specifically, guys?
So it's way too soon to call, because he is a very young player and we still need a right winger, right? But what it does is that 5 years down the road, we would have a lot more strength in our right wing. We have like Facundo Pellistri, who's actually also doing a lot well for the club, and he's been playing in the under 18s, I guess. But when we get a right winger, right? And when it's time to transition him out, we have a couple of good players coming through the ranks, pushing through for the position, which gives United the option to actually go through that transition without being needing to spend a lot of going to the market and spending a lot of cash in that position, which is a good luxury to have. Plus, if he does end up living to his, going up to his potential, I guess that would be a very good business for Manchester United.
Yeah. Did we yet talk about the Liverpool centre backs? I don't believe we talked about it.
I don't think we meant over them because of them.
But I actually wanted to talk about. I haven't spoken about Josh King, man. I've seen him. We've all seen him play next to Ryan Fraser and even this guy, dude, Callum Wilson. That guy was a baller, man. He was a super sub for Callum Wilson. He has always been scoring for Bournemouth. Even when they've been relegated, he was on their scoring charts. And even in the championship, I think he's played really well for them. So I think Josh King should be getting contention starts instead of Calvert-Lewin because he's just a aerial threat. That's all he is. I don't think Calvert-Lewin is that great with the ball. He looks.
You cannot say that Everton should drop Calvert-Lewin. I mean
the should, man. Look at
the kind of form he has. I
think he should, bro. It's not form. It's short. What? Okay, you think you want to target men up ahead? He'll be aerially controlling the ball, but does he always?
See, I'm not talking about the attributes and.
What does he offer you as a number 9?
Goals.
What do you think does he offer?
Goals.
How does he offer those goals? Tell me. Has he been scoring for?
Even if he's scoring with header, Giroud made a career out of it. Scoring headers. Ibrahimovic, Cavani have made the careers out of it. Scoring beautiful
headers. Giroud has always been underrated. He's never really gone down as a great. He's always remained on that borderline.
But I'm not saying that, but he has made a career, right? I mean, he's known for being the kind of guy who has to be a target man, who's a brilliant target man. I think that is what Calvert-Lewin is doing for Everton. I don't see any validity right now to drop him and bring King back. Because it's not about how good of a player he is. My point is just simple that if he's on a goal scoring form, and I think if he understands that, okay, this is the kind of play that helps the team give me all the balls and I'm good at the header and I think I'm scoring the goals. I don't see Ancelotti or anybody who should drop Calvert-Lewin right now unless his form dips out. I think that is why King signing is good, that they have got a backup. So that is only going to keep Calvert-Lewin with the hunger of scoring goals so as to keep his position intact. Because before that, they never had anyone. So I think he sometimes bringing those players are not just to build the team, but to get the hunger and passion to keep grinding on that particular position more. I think that is one additional reason why Ancelotti got a striker as well.
So yeah, I mean, it's,
the reason why I put that in clause in was because Josh King offers you more versatile play.
I understand. I completely understand. I completely agree with you as well. I mean,
he rose through the ranks as of recent. He's not an established footballer at all. He struggled for good 3 seasons after Lukaku left Everton. We've all been seeing him play. He was never picked up as a starting 11 contender at all. He just rose through the ranks last season, and we still need to see what can he offer this season because he just scored 30 goals in 136 appearances, man. That's nothing for a striker. In 136 appearances, you're scoring 30 goals. That's okay. That's average.
But you also need to understand which team he's playing for.
Just for time's sake, let's just talk about the centre backs for Liverpool, and then I think.
Sure.
So, Uday, what do you actually think about the new signings for?
I have no idea. I've not seen them play at all. So I'll give it straight on. I've seen Ben Davies play for Preston 2 or 3 games. Ben Davies can offer you that ball playing ability. He can give you what Van Dijk has offered offensively. He can give you long balls diagonally. Good. He's also good in hold up plays. He's good in linking balls up, for the offenses. But aerially, being a tall man, he still lacks aerial control, is what I've heard of him. Kabak played for a key team. Schalke, who are last in the league right now. So I think it's kind of contradictory in a way, but he's also very quick as a defender. He's a ball-playing defender, very quick and very pacey. So I think Liverpool have the right set of young guns for the team who can actually release themselves. But they shouldn't be playing the Premier League right now. I think they should be starting with the other matches, the practice matches, or Premier League is going to be very tough on them, especially if you have pacey, mature players playing right now. Fabinho's played as a defender all his life for Real Madrid. And especially coming to Liverpool as a centre defensive mid and playing in that role again, I think obviously he's mastered it. So I think Liverpool need to make the right decision in terms of starting Ben Davies or Kabak. If they bottle it up, I think it'll be very tough on Klopp. So I think
when Ben Davies was signed, I really thought that Liverpool needed a centre back and they signed a left back from Spurs. What the hell? And then I realized, all right, he's from Preston.
But you're saying, right, like you're saying like they don't need to start in the Premier League, but then that does that make a right decision from the Liverpool board to actually sign two centre backs on deadline day when they're not even playing?
It does. It does, because in the bench, if someone gets injured, or if someone gets injured, then it does, because then you'll have to play these defenders, right? If suppose Fabinho's out, suppose Henderson's out, now we've got the Leipzig match happening in the next 10 days.
Yeah.
So I think as the fixtures get more congested, I think we need more bench strength. So this is just for that, I think. And this season, if they don't even get to play, man, associating yourself with the defending champions is a big thing for such players who were coming last in another league altogether to Bundesliga. Schalke were a good team. They used to come post fifth in their own time. So I think
they're having a torrid time in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think they need to perform in the training and all that to impress Klopp enough to bring them in the first team.
I think I said that earlier in the podcast. I still feel they should start playing. Like at least one of them should start playing in the centre back, just so that at least there's some respite for the top three guys, the top three strikers that you guys have, because it's just that they're not getting any kind of balls to actually run behind and actually go and finish goals. You guys are.
And also, I don't see like Klopp just bringing them in for a bench booster. I think the recruitment, there are a lot of factors that go in. I mean, that could be one of the reasons why they are being signed. But I think he also knows that these two are young centre backs, and he must have seen something in them that matches the game plan that he believes Liverpool needs to play with right now. And so from my side, I see a promising future for both of them. I think they could get the chance. Probably one of them would definitely be the centre back. I don't know about both of them. But yes, I have some hopes that because it is Klopp that signed them, I think he has seen something in them that's going to bring something on the table.
So I guess
Chelsea supporter is going to jinx Klopp out. I think he's going to ooze Klopp out. Stop talking so much about Klopp, man. That poor guy is having a very torrid time.
I guess, that's it for you guys.
That's his thing.
Yeah, I mean, let's wrap up the discussion now. I mean, and thank you there for joining us on this podcast and sharing your thoughts on this one again, man. Really nice to have you and definitely.
Absolutely. It's always nice.
Yeah, it's
having the conversation with you.
It's always nice to get a Liverpool perspective on such matches and the transfer window as
and
well.
Today you also had United fans, so I mean, you must be very happy. The only problem was that
because they just add on to a lot of drama and more controversial statements, and I like it. but also, guys, I think we haven't discussed about Josh Maja. I don't know how much you guys know about him. Fulham, as a club, what do you think? Mitrovic is struggling, man. What has gone wrong there? He used to score 22 goals in the Premier League at one point of time,
Yeah.
And now he's like not in the starting 11. Why do you think is he not getting all those starts at all? I mean, he should be getting those starts. He's not even given time to score or 20, 30 odd minutes. He gets those bench starts in the 70s, 80s minutes. And now Josh Maja is at 15.
What I have noticed is that even when they were in championship, right? When they were in championship, even at that point of time, Mitrovic was getting a lot of chances that he was not scoring goals at all. Not even in championship. And I mean, he was termed as a Premier League talent. And not getting not scoring in championship, it really hampers your perspective as a first team player. And I mean,
but Anshuman, he's not a mobile. He's not a mobile player. You need. He's like Lukaku, man. He needs servicing ahead. So they can't service him. Fulham now are servicing well.
Agree.
Now they're playing fluid football under this guy. What the ex-Chelsea player's name? Managing. Yeah, Scott Parker. So, I think now they're playing very well in the build-up section, but they lack, finishing ability. They don't have anyone. And Josh Maja can give him that. Josh Maja scored 17 goals, I think, for Sunderland when Sunderland were getting relegated from the Championship too. So I think he offers a lot of that number 9 traits of just scoring those goals. He's somewhat, as you can't call him a mini version of Cavani also, but I think he's very mobile in terms of just getting behind the defenders, and he can make those runs. So I think Fulham are a club who can actually survive, the relegation maybe this season.
Yeah, let's see what happens with Fulham next week, and let's hope they can survive. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys everyone for joining, and do remember to like, share, and subscribe to our videos. Once again, thank you Uday for joining us.
Thanks, bro.
Pleasure
Thanks.
having you guys. Right, thank you guys. Bye.
Yeah.